Hello, my fellow ETHStakers. I am Invetica.eth, and this is the Validator Workshop Series. Follow along as I set up and configure an Ethereum validator from scratch. Now, for non-technical users, this can be an incredibly intimidating experience, since running a validator requires a deposit of 32 ETH, which the current market value of that is roughly $54,000 as of today, and also requires the use of the command line. Now, for these reasons, we'll be using Sameer Esat's guides to set up and configure our validator. By utilizing the guides developed by Sameer, we'll be provided in-depth explanations of what we're building, along with the commands to easily copy and paste to the command line. Additionally, Sameer's guides are well maintained and updated to include steps to maintain your validator over time. Also, these guides have been funded by the Ethereum Foundation and are considered an industry standard. For this recording, we'll be deploying an Ethereum validator on the Pyrmont testnet. If this is your first time running a validator, it's good practice to start on a testnet for a few weeks to ensure you understand what it is you're doing and verify that the setup is working properly before deploying onto mainnet. Now, we are assuming that you have the necessary prerequisites for running your validator, specifically having already requested at least 33 Goerli ETH, opened up a MetaMask account, and have a dedicated machine for staking with a fresh installation of Ubuntu Desktop. If you don't, the video tutorial for those steps are linked in the description of this video. For this video tutorial, we'll be focusing specifically on configuring and running an Ethereum Geth node, generating and funding the validator keys, importing those keys to the ETH2 client, and finally installing and configuring the ETH2 client itself. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is create a bit of a workstation here for setting up our validator. So I'm going to open up a browser session, pull it over to the side here, and then pull up Sameer Esat's guide. Now this is specifically for the Lighthouse client. Now that we have that, I'm going to go over here, and then I'm just going to type the word term, and that will bring up the terminal session. Click on that. And then I'm going to open up the show applications icon in the bottom left-hand corner and then type text to bring up a text editor. And these will be the three things that we'll use the most. All right, and one thing to note before we get too ahead of ourselves, all of the links and resources mentioned in this tutorial are all in the description of this video. So if you're following along in step with this guide, and you're not sure where we're getting the information from, just look at the description of this video and everything should be there. All right, so diving right into it, we're going to skip through some of the information in Sameer's guide here as it goes outside of the scope of this video series. And that is, so let's keep scrolling here. Step 0 wants us to connect to the server. We're just going to skip over that since we're not remoting in. One thing we are going to do is update our server to make sure that we have all of the necessary patches. So let's go ahead and run these two commands. Now, if you're new to the command line, there are all these copy and paste commands throughout the guide. We are disregarding the $sign. That's just an indicator that it's another command. We're not copying and pasting that entire thing. You simply copy and paste everything to the right of the $sign. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this first update command in our command line. All right, so that's complete. Let's go ahead and run this second command. And a lot of this is just going to be copy and pasting, but what we'll do is walk through exactly what it is we're running while copying and pasting. So our system is updated. Let's go ahead and type the word clear and then hit enter. And let's continue on with the guide. Now step 2 is also outside of the scope of this video series, and that's securing your server. Mainly configuring the firewall, adding SSH, etc. These are great features to add, but there are levels of variation when doing this, so we're just going to skip past that. However, one thing we do want to do is open up the appropriate ports for both our ETH1 and ETH2 node. So let's go ahead and copy this first command to open up port 30303. And we can see that has confirmed. And then let's also open up these two ports that allow Prysm to talk. So that's port 13,000 and 12,000. Okay, so we've got our rules added. There's also steps here for adding Grafana and Prometheus, which are monitoring and dashboard tools, again, outside of the scope of this video. However, feel free to follow these steps and set up your own dashboard. Next, what we're going to do is actually install and configure the Geth node. So the first thing to do is download the actual file. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that. All right, that's completed. Let's go ahead and update the package. And then install it. So let's just run this command. Okay, so now Geth is installed, which is our ETH1 node. Now what we're going to do is create a background service, and you can kind of tell by the name, basically what we're going to do is create a file or program that runs in the background, specifically our ETH1 node and our ETH2 node. This is great too, so if, for example, our machine reboots, so too will our services, and then run in the background and continue to process. So for example, once we set up our ETH1 node, it's going to take quite some time to sync up with the rest of the blockchain. Well, instead of sitting there waiting for it to run, we can basically have it run in the background while we process the rest of the validator setup. So let's go ahead and begin that process. First thing we need to do is create the account that the service is going to run under. So we're going to run this command. And again, we're just copying and pasting. Next, we're going to create the data directory for the ETH1 node to use. We're just going to copy and paste that. And then we're just going to set the appropriate permissions for that directory to run in. And copy and paste that. Let's go ahead and clear our screen by typing clear and then hitting enter. Now this next command is actually going to set up the systemd service to run in the background. So let's copy and paste this command, and you'll notice that it opens up a text editor. What we're going to do is copy and paste this entire config file and put it into our text editor. And we're just going to slightly format it here. And this tells our ETH1 node, gives it all the parameters in order to run. So to save this file, what we're going to do is hit Control X. It's going to ask us to save. We're going to hit Y for yes, and then enter to close. All right, so now our background service has been created. So let's go ahead and reload the system daemon to apply the changes that we just created. So we're going to copy and paste this command. And now what we can do is start our Geth service. So let's run the start command. Now let's run the status command to confirm that the service actually is up and running. And there we go. We can see that it's active and running. So what we're going to do now is hit Control C to exit this screen. Let's go ahead and clear our screen again. Scrolling on through the guide, we're going to run this command. This allows the restart of the program if your physical machine is rebooted. So if your machine's rebooted and you don't run this command, you'll have to manually start any and all services on your machine. This command automatically starts them upon reboot. Now what we want to do is check to make sure that the ETH node is on its way to syncing. We can do that by checking the logs here. So let's go ahead and run this command just to see what it looks like. And what we're doing here now is the ETH1 node is looking for peers. Once it reaches a minimum threshold of peers, it will begin syncing with the ETH1 chain. This can take quite some time. So what we're going to do is hit Control C, and we'll just let that run in the background. Now it is worth noting that the ETH1 node does have to sync entirely before your Beaconchain node is allowed to sync. But we'll get to that point in a section, but it's just something worth noting. Now what we're going to do is start installing our ETH2 client. So let's go ahead and install the prerequisites. Let's go ahead and run this command to install curl. All right, that's completed. Let's go ahead and run these following commands. These are all software packages needed. And then one more here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is update everything. So let's go ahead and clear our screen first, and then run these 3 commands. So let's just copy and paste this one. All right, that's completed. Let's copy the next one over. And finally, the last one. Okay, that's completed. Let's go ahead and continue on here and install the last couple programs. That's completed. Let's do the second one. And the last one here. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that on over. Okay, great. Now what we can do is actually install and build the Prysm client. All right, so the latest release is actually 1.3.4. So what we're going to do first is copy and paste this command into our text editor. And we're going to change this from version 1.0.0 to 1.3.4. And then we're going to copy and paste this command into our terminal. Well, it looks like Git is not installed, so let's go ahead and just run the install for Git real quick. Okay, that's installed. Let's go ahead and hit the up arrow one more time, and then that retrieves our previous command and we can issue that again. All right, that's completed. So let's go ahead and change into the Prysm directory by using the following command. And now we're going to compile the Beaconchain and Validator binaries. This can take quite some time. So let's go ahead and clear our screen, and then let's run this first command. And what we're doing here is compiling everything that we've just downloaded in relation to the Beaconchain and Validator. So let's just run this first command. Now, full disclosure, this can take quite some time depending on the hardware specs of your machine. All right, looks like our machine has finished compiling. Let's go ahead and copy and paste the command for the validator. All right, that was much quicker. So let's go ahead and keep scrolling, and now what we're going to do is configure our Beaconchain. So let's go ahead and set up the accounts and directories. First, let's clear our screen and then run the following command. Next, we're going to create the data directory. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that command, and then set the appropriate permissions for the directory we just created. All right. Now what we're going to do is copy the Beaconchain binaries. So let's first change the directory to make sure that we are in the home directory with the cd tilde command. And let's go ahead and copy and paste this command. Next, what we're going to do is create and configure the background service. This is exactly what we did with the ETH1 node. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this command. It's going to open up our text editor, and then we're simply going to copy and paste the configuration block and put that into our text editor and just briefly format it based on the example in the guide. Okay, we're all set. Now to save, we're going to do Control X. We're going to hit Y for yes, and then enter to exit. Okay. Next, we're going to run the system daemon reload. This will apply the changes that we had just made. And now we can do the same thing, just like we did with the ETH1 node. Let's go ahead and start our Beaconchain. And then let's run the status command to make sure that is in fact running. And there we go. We are active and running. Let's go ahead and hit Control C to exit this screen. Let's go ahead and clear our screen by typing clear and then enter. And let's continue on with the guide. Now what we want to do is issue this command. This is the enable command, which will allow the beacon chain to restart if and when your server or computer is restarted. And then same as before, if we want to check the logs for the beacon chain, we can run this journal command. Let's just go ahead and see if things are processing, and it is in fact. All right, now the time has come to generate our validator keys. So let's go ahead and follow those instructions. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is change our directory and make sure that we're in the home directory. Now what we're going to do is download the Deposit CLI program, which is a command line based wizard, which will walk us through and help us generate our seed phrase, key stores, and deposit data. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that command. All right, looks like that's completed downloading. Let's go ahead and unpack it and then change directories into the folder we just downloaded. And since we don't need the downloaded tar file anymore, just a quick house cleaning tip, let's go ahead and run this command, which will remove the tar file. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the Deposit CLI program. Now, before we enter this into the command line, let's copy and paste it into our text document. There's a variable that we need to change, and that is to specify the number of validators that we're going to be running. Now in this case, we'll be running 1, so we're just going to change it to the number 1. Furthermore, I want to point out the chain flag here. Clearly, we're using the Pyrmont testnet. If you were to use this on mainnet, you would simply change Pyrmont to mainnet. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this command. And there we go. So now the Deposit CLI program is running. Let's go ahead and generate a password for our key stores. And now the password has been accepted and the program has generated our seed phrase. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that into our text document. Now just a quick word about your seed phrase. You would never give this out to anyone for any reason. Effectively, whoever has access to your seed phrase has access to your validator and thus has control over your ether. So make sure that you, 1, keep it safe from others, and 2, keep it safe from damage and that you know where it is. So let's go ahead and continue on. The Deposit CLI is going to verify that we have in fact copied our mnemonic phrase because it is important. It is effectively the keys to your validator. So let's go ahead and verify that we have it written down correctly. We have in fact, and now the program is going to generate our key stores and our deposit file. Looks like that is completed, and then it has put those files in this physical location. Let's go ahead and copy and paste that directory location because we will be referring to that later. We're just going to hit the enter key and then let's clear our screen. Moving on to the rest of the guide. Now what we want to do is fund the validator keys. Let's go ahead and click over to the Pyrmont Launchpad. We're going to click on Become a Validator. Now we're going to run through these screens fairly quickly. However, I'd submit to you that you read through these very carefully so that you fully understand the risks and responsibilities involved. So we're just going to accept all of these. We're going to keep these the defaults. Okay, now we've got our summary page here. We're going to confirm that we just want the single validator. The rest of the default selection on here is just fine. We're going to go ahead and click that we acknowledge that we have our mnemonic phrase in a safe place. And now what we want to do is upload our deposit data. So we're going to very easily do that by opening up a file manager here. You'll see it on the Ubuntu taskbar. And we're going to go into the file location provided by the Deposit CLI. So we're already in home. Let's click on the ETH2 Deposit CLI folder. Click into Validator Keys. And here we see our deposit data file and our key store file. So let's go ahead and upload the deposit data file into the Launchpad. And there we go. We've successfully have that uploaded. We can now continue on with the wizard. Now what we're going to do is fund the validator keys and make the initial deposit into the blockchain. So let's go ahead and connect our wallet. It's going to ask us to confirm the connection. We're going to go ahead and do that. The Launchpad has synced with our wallet. We'll go ahead and click continue. This is just the summary now. So yes, we do want to launch one validator. We are acknowledging all the risks and responsibilities of being a node operator, and then we're hitting continue. Now this is the important part. This is where we're actually depositing the funds into our onto the chain. Again, this is just test ether or Goerli ETH. You would never deposit real ether into this network, as you can't retrieve it and you've effectively burned those assets. So let's go ahead and confirm the deposit. It's going to ask us, do we in fact want to deposit the 32 Goerli ETH? It is on the Goerli testnet. So let's go ahead and hit confirm. The transaction has started, and we can track that on the EtherScan here. And there we go. We just got a browser notification that it went through. Let's just refresh the page here. And the transaction went through successfully. We're going to keep this screen up here and refer to it later. But let's go ahead and hit continue. Now we're all set, so let's go back to the guide. We're just going to scroll past these steps as we just completed them. Now what we need to do is create the wallet for the validator rewards to be deposited into. So let's go ahead and first create the validator directory. Before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure that we're in our home directory by just typing cd:\enter. All right, let's go ahead and copy and paste this first command. And what we're going to do is copy and paste this next command in our text editor, as there is one variable that we need to supply for ourselves, and that is the username for our machine. Now this is going to be different depending on how you've set up your machine. In our case, it's right here. admin@Prysm Validator. This is the name of our server. The admin part is our username, so we're just going to change that here. So admin. And then we're going to copy and paste this command into our command line. There we go. Next, what we're going to do is change into the Prysm directory. And then we're going to run this command to import our validator keys. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this command first into our text document, because there's another variable, and that is the path to the validator keys. Now, if you remember, we copied the path when we ran our deposit CLI program. We're simply going to copy and paste that location in the key directory section. Now that we have that updated, let's go ahead and take the command and copy and paste into the command line. Okay, so that command has completed. Now it's prompting us to enter a wallet directory. Now we want to specifically put it in this location, which is var lib Prysm Validator. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that into our command line here and then hit enter. Now we want to create a password for the wallet. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, there we go. We can see that we've successfully imported our keys. That's fantastic. Now what we're going to do is confirm the validator accounts have been created. So let's go ahead and clear our screen and then run this command. And that worked successfully. So let's go ahead and put our validator password in. There we go. Everything looks great. Next, what we're going to do is store our password in a text file for the validator to use. So let's go ahead and run this command. and then run the following command, which will open up a text editor. Now what we're going to do here is simply put in the password that we generated in the deposit CLI. Once we have the password in, that's all you have to do. Hit Control X, then Y to save, and Enter to exit. Now we want to make sure that we have the correct permissions so that the system reads that file correctly. So let's go ahead and run this command. And that's it. So now what we're going to do is configure our validator. So let's go ahead and run through those steps. The first thing we're going to do, this is just like the Beacon node and the ETH1 node. We're going to first create the user. Next, we're going to run this command, which is the setting the permissions for the directory. And now what we want to do is run these commands. Make sure that we're in our home directory, and then copy over some files using this command. All right, so now let's go ahead and create the background service for our validator. We're going to run the sudo nano command, which will open up the text editor, and all we have to do is copy and paste this configuration file provided in the guide. And then we'll just make some slight modifications for formatting's sake. There we go. And one line I want to point out here is the graffiti tag. Now what this does is it's an arbitrary string of text that you can put in whatever you'd like. There we go. And what this does is it posts that text string if and when your validator has proposed a block. It's just sort of a way to saying that, yes, you did this and here's our tag on it. So to save this file, let's go Control X, Y to save, and hit Enter to finish the save. Let's go ahead and run the system daemon reload to apply the changes we had just made. Let's go ahead and clear our screen. And now let's start our validator. Let's first run the start command, and we'll verify once again with the status command. And there we go, we're active and running. So let's go ahead and exit out of this screen by hitting Control C, and then let's go ahead and type clear and clear our screen. Next, what we're going to do is run the enable command so that if your system's ever rebooted, the validator reboots as well. And let's verify the logs are running properly too in our validator. And there we go. So it's waiting to sync with the chain head. So basically everything is waiting for the ETH1 and ETH2 nodes to finish syncing with the chain. Let's go ahead and exit from the screen with Control C, and then let's clear our screen. And that's it. You are now running your very own Ethereum validator node. Now, a couple items to note here. Again, the ETH1 node needs to properly sync, and then at which time your Beacon node will start syncing, and then your validator will start picking up. Something also to note, if we go back to our browser here, let's maximize our browser window and go back to the deposit transaction. Now, one thing I want to point out here is the Beaconchain deposit section where you have your validator public key. This is literally your validator number. So if we click into that, we're going to see a couple things. First, we'll see the status of the deposit that we just made. And right now we're seeing that there's a bit of a wait. So in about 15 to 16 hours, we'll formally see that deposit process on the testnet. And the other thing we can do here is if we copy this address, next what we're going to do is go to the Pyrmont.Beaconchain address, and then let's just copy and paste our validator address in there. And now we can see the full status of where our validator is in relation to the test network. So we can see that our deposit has gone through, and now it's going to take, looks like around 15 hours for our validator to be processed into the network and be contributing attestations and proposing blocks. Now, we did cover a lot of information in this tutorial. However, the steps accomplished today only represent a minimally functioning validator. I would highly recommend following all of the security steps in Sameer's guide. Additionally, if you do want to develop a dashboard to monitor your validator, please feel free to follow the instructions provided by Samir, which are also in the guides. As always, if you run into any issues at all, the ETHStaker community is here to help. Our goal is to be welcoming first and knowledgeable second. There are no silly questions and no question too small. Simply ask and we'll do our best to help. For more in-depth and advanced features, make sure to check out our monthly ETHStaker Validator Workshops. Details on when those are will be hosted on our website at ETHStaker.cc. All right, that's it from me. I'm Envetica.eth, and we'll see you around.